Welcome to the Hidden Podcast, where we simplify cybersecurity and all things tech for those of you who, like me, need it to be explained without all the jargon. So, if you've ever wondered why you still feel vulnerable even though you've bought all the fancy tools, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Lynn, and my job is to take one of our resident experts and help them translate their cyber expertise into plain English. This means having practical conversations, usually built around Babbel's hidden cybersecurity framework, which we break down in the show. Or sometimes we'll take a hot topic in the tech industry, like a major breach or a new legislation, and we'll explain how we help you stay ahead. Basically, this podcast exists so that you can sleep well at night, preferably not during the podcast. Joining me in the virtual studio today is James Gaskell. Thanks for being here, James.
No problem, Lynn. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So before we dive in, do you mind telling our listeners or viewers out there a little bit about yourself in terms of what you do and where you live?
Yeah, sure. I'm one of the strategic account managers here at Babbel. I work primarily within the public sector, but also within some of the larger private sector accounts. I've been in the industry doing telecoms and MSP and antivirus and cybersecurity things for about 10 years now. I'm based up in the northwest of England.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, I've never been to England before, but it's definitely on my bucket list. So before we get into the episode in and of itself, do you mind telling us a bit about, what you like most about what you do?
What I love most about this industry in particular, and specifically around the cybersecurity, is how it's always changing. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to find out about. It's a constant cycle of learning and behavioral changes, and it makes it really engaging for me. Some industries are very static. This isn't. This is a really dynamic place to work, and it really keeps you on your toes. You can't rest for a minute.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm not as close to the industry as you are, but even me as a common civilian, cybersecurity is top of mind for everybody, right? Hence this podcast. So today we're unpacking a very crucial question, which is how confident are you that your people would spot a convincing phishing attempt? So, James, we often think cyber attacks are purely technical, right? But the data shows that most, a whopping 95%, of breaches trace back to human error. Why is that still the case?
I mean, the statistic there really does speak for itself. Phishing attacks are the most common form of cybercrime. There's billions and billions of emails, spam emails sent every day all over the world to targeted addresses, just attempting to break in to get a little bit of information. Now, I know, because having researched it and being in the industry, that this is a really effective way of getting that information, trying to break into those different types of targets, because just how many they can do in one go. They can scattershot attack it, and it's really effective against what we call the digital natives, who are the millennials and the Gen Z. The primary targets of this are the people who have grown up on the internet, and we're very commonly sharing our information. We chuck in an email address when we want free Wi-Fi. We scan things when we're told we'll get something for free, and we're really the targets and the most common victims of those attacks. And because such a huge proportion of the UK businesses have those generations as staff members, a load of those cyber attacks are targeted against those users and those businesses as well. So it's super common and very, very successful.
Yeah, it's definitely really scary to just hear about the statistics and the prevalence as well. Something that you had said jumped out at me in terms of scattershot attacks. Do you mind unpacking a little bit what those are?
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of the phishing attacks is you can do it to such a wide audience that and if you imagine that your rate of returns is 1 in a million, you send out a million emails and only one of them comes back. For any other industry, that wouldn't be worth it. But the wealth that people can generate, the amount of information they can get with phishing attacks, and then the value they can extort from customers from that is through the roof. And if it's as simple as just pressing go on a button on a bunch of email addresses you've already got, that is something that can be done over and over again. It's very, very light touch. Most people have a spam filter and they just ignore it. And that's not a concern. If only one person clicks it, then that's been a little bit of a success, and it can be done over and over and over again.
Really scary stuff. And it reminds me of the conversation that I had with Mark O'Dell in the very first episode of this podcast, which was, about how easy it is to just not only create these phishing attacks, but to scale them. And obviously, AI sits at the center of all of that. So if you
Hmm.
haven't tuned into that episode, please do so. But bringing it back to this one, threat actors are increasingly using targeted social engineering attacks to evade defenses and to trick users. So, James, what's changed about phishing and social engineering over the last 2 to 3 years?
There's so much to unpack in that, because how people act online, during COVID, especially in the UK, everyone was forced to work from home. We were all asked to use new software, new devices, new ways of working, and we had to adapt to it very, very quickly. And with technology always changing, people like me, and I'll hold my hands up here, I'm very, very accepting of being told, scan this, follow this link, do that. And I'll admit, right, I got caught not long ago with a simulated phishing attack. We're at a work event kickoff earlier in the year, and our cyber team had put up some scan this QR code and claim your free Amazon voucher or your free jacket. And I love a free Amazon voucher, right? I love something for. I'll drive 200 miles for a free lunch. So I'm an easy target. But I scanned it and I followed through, and I handed over all my details. I gave my address, I gave my office, I gave my email, I gave my boss's name, I gave him his email. During the event, about 2 hours later, they asked everyone to stand up, and they said, if you've seen all these posters, stay stand. If you didn't see them, sit down. And everyone, well, not everyone, a load of people sat down, and I thought, oh, here we go. What have I done here? And I'd done it, and luckily, as I say, it was a simulated attack. It was all fake. It was just to show how easy it is to fall into these bad habits, and it is. It's so easy, because I said I've worked in the industry. I worked for a company that all they did was sell cybersecurity products, and I got caught out. And so it's not a case of, oh, this person's an easy mark, this person here is stupid, this person here is not paying attention. It's because we, as users and as people who live in this day and age and of a certain age bracket, we are conditioned, and we just hand that information over. It's no qualms to us. We just give it away. How many times you've given away your email address, kind of thing. And that's all it is. And that's what makes it so easy, so repeatable. And once they've got one bit of information, they can store it down and keep it, and then they can sell it, and then somebody else has it and they can attack it as well and use it in a different way. And that's what makes it so different and so difficult now with AI and all the information they can get from different sources. They can pin you down, they can track your location. I mean, it's all very Minority Report, very Big Brother, but the intelligence we put behind it now is quite scary in a way. And it's that particular simulated attack is something I've been really open about talking to my customers with. Because it's a laugh, right? We can all have a laugh and giggle with it, especially because some of the SLT within this business also did it. But imagine if that hadn't have been simulated, if that had been real, if someone at a venue that we were attending decided they were going to replicate that for their own personal gain, and you were using a work device that had sensitive information on it, whatever that may
Yeah.
be that addresses, banking information, financial information, anything. There's a huge problem with it. And so, I think with just how available data is, that's what's made it so targeted and so tempting.
Yeah, a lot of great points, well made as usual. And, I love that you brought up the SKO. Obviously, being based in South Africa, I wasn't able to attend, but I attended virtually. And I feel like I would definitely fall victim to it as well. And it goes back to an earlier point that you made in terms of us digital natives, right? We're just so used to giving away so much of our personal information, and we seldomly take the time to take a step back and to actually analyze, okay, where is this going? Why am I being asked for this? We're always just looking either at the reward that lies at the end, like a free Amazon jacket, or maybe it's fear-based, right? Because a lot of the phishing attempts that I've come across personally, right, not even just on my work email, but my personal email, it's always about, you need to do this. It's allegedly from your bank, and they really just play on your emotions as well. It also speaks to that element of complacency as well
Mm,
that you've mentioned in the past, because it's kind of just rote at this point, just going through the
mm.
motions, just give me what I need and then let me be about my day. But like you
Well,
said, luckily it was just a simulation, but
yeah.
it's not always the case.
Well, that's a really interesting point, though, what you made about being from the bank, that fear element of it, because there was a time when I changed the detail on some home insurance. Very recently, I changed one piece of information for my home insurance to contact my wife because we were during the process of a move, and she was handling the admin side of things from that. And me updating one bit of information for the home insurance had a cascade effect that affected my actual bank. So when I went into my overdraft, which I'm one to do, it sent her the notification rather than myself. So she was getting text messages about my bank and and being the overdraft, she's, well, why don't I have a bank account with this? So she could ignore it. And the only reason we picked up on it, and she mentioned it to me, is that we'd been in a similar situation a couple of weeks prior where I was getting information about one of her loans because I was classed as a primary contact. And so there was like a break in the information chain. And it was all fine. It was all resolved. It didn't cause any issues. But had we assumed, which we did for a couple of weeks, that it was a phishing attempt and just ignored it, if we'd have carried on ignoring it and not communicated it to each other, we'd have been in real trouble. But there was no human element involved there. There was no one we can actually sit there and speak to face and say, this is what we need to do. And because we're so reliant on those technology and the rules are so strict and how you need to engage with technology, sometimes it's easier just to assume it's true.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that everything worked out for the best, but we know that because they're getting so sophisticated and they can actually be quite pushy as well, because sometimes you'll
Mm.
ignore these attempts, right? Because you want to err on the side of caution, but sometimes it could be an error on the legitimate sources side. And there's no way of really telling, like you said, without having that human voice to talk to as well. That's definitely a great point to make. So thank you for adding that little anecdote there. And this nicely segues into the next question I have for you, which is around behavior, right? So, James, in your opinion, why are attackers targeting behavior instead of trying to break through firewalls?
I'm going to misquote a customer here. They pay a lot of money for a premium firewall, and if an attacker can breach the firewall, what else can they do? And a lot of times these firewalls they come with insurances, they come with assurances, service level agreements. They are very good at what they do. They are designed to be good. They're constantly maintained, monitored, and it takes a lot of effort to crack through them. And a lot of times these people doing it, they haven't got the expertise or the incentive or the inclination to try and hack through. What's easier is, I mean, this is going back a couple of years now, probably 10, maybe 15 years. But part of the company I worked for did it wasn't called cyber security at the time. It was just called, I think it was just called behaviour or something like that. They dropped a load of pen drives in a car park. In our secure car park, they put a load of pen drives on the floor in the car park, about 15 of them. And there was something on the pen drive that when you installed it onto your computer, it would send a message to IT who'd plugged it in so they could rap them on the knuckles and say, don't plug random pen drives into your secure device, you fool, because it's not smart. But people are curious. People are easily misled, people are confused, people are busy, people are prone to making mistakes. We are not machines, we are fallible human beings. And so that is why they target behavior. It's because it's easier to predict behavior than it is changes in firewalls, and it's easier to influence it as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, all it takes is one moment in time and one lapse of judgment for basically everything to go belly up. Where do you see the biggest gaps in SMB environments when it comes to human risk?
From my experience, it's that cybersecurity is approached kind of like a car MOT, and that you'll go to it and 2 weeks before your MOT, you start sweating and you think, oh, how much is this going to cost me? What do I need to do? Do I need it serviced? Do I need new brakes? Do I need wipers, tires, whatever? And so you once a year you throw a load of money at it, you rush around like an idiot for a day, and then once that day is over and you've got that lovely pass certificate, you forget about it. You do not, unless you have a problem, your brakes start squeaking, you will not think about it again. And I think that is really the biggest problem there, because as I said, the reason I love this industry is it's a learning curve, right? And this it's so easy to become complacent and stuff. We know it is, but how everything keeps changing, it's what brings me back to it and keeps me coming back and pushing to sell it. Having people approach it as a learning curve, as an active, dynamic environment, repeatable ways to learn. There are many different ways to teach people how things can be resolved online. And I think small business as usual style tests, for lack of a better word, or information dumps or demonstrations is better than once every blue moon you do a huge day on it, because people get saturated and it won't go in. It just needs to become business as usual.
just looking at cybersecurity as a tick box exercise
Mm.
is definitely, the beginning of, I don't want to be dramatic and say the beginning of the end, but it's definitely not the mindset that one should take. So I completely agree with that. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about this element of visibility, right? Like, let's say the average UK business owner knows that human risk is a little bit of an issue, but you don't know what you don't know, if that makes sense. So what does quote unquote lack of visibility into human risk actually mean?
An easy way to really know if you've got a good handle on things is the head of IT will often assume that they know what people are doing because they see the IT team, the people who use the computers the most, and they will know what that team is using. But do you really know what your finance team are using or your credit control team are using to perhaps write their emails? Once that information's put in, it's online, it's stored somewhere. That isn't the information that IT can control. If they're using third-party apps to do different things, so shadow IT is a huge, huge problem. So if you ask random users what they're using, they're going to throw things out that you're not expecting to hear. We pay a lot of money internally for a CRM. I know I'm really guilty of keeping stuff on a OneNote. And then I take it from OneNote and put it into the CRM because it's easier for me to use the OneNote than it is the CRM when I'm out on the road talking to my customers. It's just convenient. But if there's a gap there, or if someone's using a personal device to make notes, you still see people using pen and paper, right? Pen and paper is really common. But if you lose that notebook, that information's gone. So it's there's lots of different aspects of it. And when you start peeling back the layers of what it is that people are actually doing in the real world, what you find out is that there are ideals or policies in place where the IT department say, right, this is what people should do, and everyone in a nuclear circle in that immediate vicinity is following those steps. But you take one step outside of the room and those policies fall apart, and then you go to people who are very rarely in the office and those policies aren't even known, and then you get further and further away from it until you get people who are basically using their work devices like personal devices, or not updating security functions or not following user procedures. And because you don't have visibility of that, as in you can't see them doing it, there's no reporting set up. There's these huge gaps in your posture.
You brought up some excellent points, particularly around shadow IT and personal devices. So we'll dive into the latter in another episode when we cover, the risks around BYOD and things like that. But coming back to shadow IT in particular, I can also definitely attest to looking into these different tools that'll help me be more efficient, more productive, help me save time. But before you hit the ground running, it is absolutely important to run it past your IT team or whoever is in charge of looking after the security of the business as well, because if that technology is not greenlit by the powers that be, so to speak, then it is classified as shadow IT and it's not on the business's radar, and therefore it could lead to a breach. Just wanted to make sure that I have broken that down in plain English as well and making sure I'm on the same page as you. All right. Why do most organizations treat human risk reactively, so only after someone clicks on a fishy link, for example?
Again, going back to the lack of visibility, you sometimes only know there's a problem after you have been made aware there's a problem. A lot of people, especially in the SMB sector, think they're too small. They think, oh, we're too small. There's no point targeting us. We've only got 12 people in the business. And that's just not true anymore. We talked about how easy it is to target people. Even if you are only 12 people and you only deal with a handful of customers, you're part of a supply chain to some larger organizations. You are a vulnerable link in a chain somewhere, and getting a foot in the door, even if it isn't something for immediate use, is going to be useful for someone down the line. Some people are really on top of it. Some people really understand it, and that is always growing. People listening to this are people who are already aware how serious it can be. But it's definitely an area where I think there needs to be more of an understanding about it, because it's so easy to think, oh no, we'll be fine, and then it hits, and it's like when your house is broken into. It's too late to be putting up security cameras and floodlights at that point. All your stuff's already gone, but you don't want it to happen again. And it's very, very difficult sometimes to excuse the expenditure, because sometimes it's seen as expenditure, it's not seen as an investment before the fact. It's you wait to see what the damage is going to be, and I'm afraid to say the damage can be massive. It can be really, really painful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one just needs to look at the headlines that have been coming out, what seems like daily, to see how serious this situation is. So let's switch gears to something a little bit more positive because, as we know, while your people can be your biggest risk, they can also be your strongest line of defense. So let's take a look at what that looks like in practical terms. What does good actually look like when it comes to managing human risk?
It's a lot easier than people think. And now, obviously, we've been really doom and gloom about how dangerous it is out there. A lot of time, people are, if they haven't been attacked, is an indication that they are on someone's radar, but it hasn't landed yet. But if you haven't been attacked yet, you haven't been attacked yet. And it's not impossible or even actually really that cost prohibitive to get your people doing the right things. There's loads and loads of people out there, not just Babbel, but we do specialize in it too. We work with some great partners to get your people up to speed and show you where those gaps are. Now, obviously, this is around the hidden piece, and there's a whole section around human risk element, and it's such a broad topic that I could spend hours talking about how you address every individual aspect of it. But just getting in a place, just getting a handle of how people in your organization actually perceive cybersecurity and your posture, and then making very small incremental changes to a desirable endpoint to allow you to operate with confidence that your people are doing the right things. It starts with baby steps. It really does small steps, making sure, for example, that everyone actually is understanding of how dangerous things can be, how easy it is to fall into these traps. Because the minute they see that actually this person here is my colleague or my peer has been got out, oh my God, I need to change how I approach this because I would have done that too. I just need to spend half a second to think about it. And those changes can be rolled out really, really easily and very, very quickly. And so I say, yeah, little baby steps to get you to a desired endpoint are definitely what I would recommend.
Love that, because it can definitely be overwhelming, when
Hmm.
you have all these leaks at the bottom of your bucket and you don't know which one to cover first. But something that I love about talking to each and every one of you experts is just that sense of, yes, it's a lot to take in, but small little steps really do make a big difference in the bigger scheme of things. And especially starting with human risk. Just as a sidebar, we will definitely be having more conversations, diving into the deeper different elements of human risk, but just keeping it at a broad level for now. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking about how powerful that SKO was. I think everybody tuning in or there at the event definitely learned a lesson about how easy it is to get caught out as well. So making human risk measurable, right? Now we've spoken about this element of starting to get a lid over it and talking about the issue of visibility, or rather the importance of it. So, if a business is serious about improvement, as they obviously are tuning into this episode, how do they now go about measuring human risk properly?
That's a really difficult question because if you've not got the flags there, you don't know what you're measuring against. There is no solid state of what good looks like. And this is why I said about the baby steps. I would always recommend for those instances is you speak to an expert. It's so important for them to be able to decide where you want to be. With any kind of technology rollout, you need to really define what the endpoint looks like before you start. Because if you think, you've got a vague idea and you start going towards it, then you get drift, and you kind of get further away from the actual core of the problem. And so I would always recommend, when you are looking to try and find out how it becomes measurable, is you get one of us on a call with you and we'll talk you through it so we can see, because everyone's estate is unique and what everyone wants their endpoint to be is unique. And so we can get you where you want to be, but we just need to figure out what that is.
Mm, perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, I don't have any other questions for you, but is there something else that you would want to add before we officially close?
It seems insurmountable, but it isn't. You just need to decide to make the change, and it is as easy as deciding to make the change to shore that human risk element up. If you're unsure about it, if you want to know more about it, internally we've got so many people who can talk your ear off about what good looks like and how we get you there. And so many products, as you say, we talk and talk and talk about it, but we can help you get there. We can explain it in bite-sized chunks, and don't worry about appearing foolish, because the reason it's so successful is that we as people are fallible and they know what to target. It's the same as any kind of marketing thing, that people know what works, and this is something that works. Targeting behaviors works. And so don't feel ashamed to come to speak to us about it, because you can only fix it by trying to fix it.
Perfect. All right. Couldn't have ended it on a better note. So without further ado, thank you so much again, James. It has been an absolute pleasure.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on today's episode of The Hidden Podcast. If this episode gave you an aha moment that helped you untangle something that's been bugging you, subscribe and share it with a friend who's in the same boat. And if you're wondering where you stand across the 6 hidden layers, try our cybersecurity snapshot in the description below. It's a lot less painful than a breach. Until next time, don't let your risks stay hidden.